75% of what the universe contains. So essentially, 3/4 of the universe is dark energy. 1/4 is matter. Of that 1/4, for every gram of visible matter, there are 5 grams of invisible dark matter.
So I'm guessing that dark matter plays a key role in the universe and a key role in the models that we use to explain how the universe works.
Yes, I often like to say to my students that they should be grateful to the dark matter because without dark matter, we wouldn't be here. And the reason is quite simple. It's not the dark matter as such that's important, it's the gravitational force that it exerts. Because this gravitational force of the dark matter is responsible for the growth and formation of galaxies in the universe. And without dark matter, we would have no galaxies. Our universe would be just a vast boring expanse of amorphous matter. So the dark matter is responsible for the formation of galaxies. Without dark matter, there would be no galaxies. Without galaxies, of course, there would be no stars. Without stars, there would be no planets. Without planets, there would be no people. So dark matter really is responsible for all the great riches of structure that we see in the universe around us.
How are we looking for evidence of that? We've hypothesized that without this, everything that we know doesn't exist, but how do we go about specifically looking for it?
One of the great scientific achievements of the 20th century was the development of an idea that eventually became known as the standard model of cosmology. So this is a sort of creation myth almost. It's a theory of the biggest object in itself. So according to this theory, the standard model of cosmology, the universe began almost at the time about 13.7 billion years ago. And since then it has been expanding. Recently it went into this accelerated expansion. But at early times the universe was very smooth, almost perfectly smooth, but not completely perfectly smooth. There were small irregularities, and these irregularities grew under the attraction of dark matter gravity. Now this theory was first put forward in the 1980s, in the early 1980s, developed largely through another wonderful tool that cosmologists have developed, the tool of computer simulations. Because it turns out in cosmology we have an enormous disadvantage compared to other scientists because we cannot carry out experiments, or we cannot go out in space and weigh a galaxy. But over the last 30 years or so, we developed a really, really powerful strategy, which is to simulate the evolution of the whole universe. And what we do is, in principle, we just program a computer that has a magic universe with the laws of physics, and we supplement that with some assumption about what the universe contains, dark matter, dark energy, ordinary matter, and then we let the supercomputer solve the equations of physics to create, as it were, a virtual universe. So the combination of new theoretical ideas, computer simulations, and astronomical observations is one of the great achievements of science over the last 30 years, because this theory, called the cold dark matter theory, accounts for a vast array of astronomical observations, from the properties of individual galaxies to the large structure of the universe, and moreover to the properties of the early universe, which we can observe. So over this whole range of timescales, from the time when the universe was only a few 100,000 years old to today, 13.7 billion years later, and over a whole range of scales, from galaxies to the large structure of the universe, this standard model of cosmology accounts for virtually everything that we can see. So it's a success story. However, there's a little bit of a letdown recently, because observations of a particular kind of galaxy known as dwarf galaxies, very tiny galaxy satellites that orbit in the other parts of the Milky Way, have begun to shadow on the standard model of cosmology. So these dwarf galaxies are very, very peculiar because they are essentially lumps of dark matter with a little sprinkling of stars. Very, very few stars, just enough so that astronomers can discover them. They are the perfect laboratory for the dark matter physicists because they are lumps of dark matter orbiting the Milky Way, and we can go and investigate the properties of detail and make measurements of the few stars that they contain. This has happened over the last few years, and to everybody's horror, the data seem to indicate that these lumps of dark matter is not what the doctor ordered, is not what the standard model of cosmology predicts should be there. And the differences are relatively subtle, but very, very subtle. According to cold dark matter theory, these lumps should be really, really dense. Yet, the observations show that they're not dense, they're puffed up. They're almost at the verge of dissolving.
So you're able to actually observe this dark matter?
No, you don't see the dark matter, but you can infer its properties. This is where physics is so wonderful. You don't see the dark matter, it doesn't shine, it's completely dark, but you see the stars. The stars move around in response to the dark matter that's producing the gravity. So by studying motions of these stars, we learn about the dark matter without having to observe it.
So were the results of these new observations not what you expected then?
Exactly, they're absolutely unexpected. And they're a big, big challenge to the theory. Let me say before we throw the theory out, that this theory is really, really powerful. And the theory has been so successful.
Hey dude, how's it going?
To develop experiments to try and detect this stuff. The ingenuity of experimental particle physicists is unbounded, and they have developed apparatus that could actually detect dark matter. And actually, in the last 2 years, there have been lots of claims, claims of discovery of the dark matter. The trouble is, different groups have claimed to have found dark matter with properties very different from what the previous group had claimed. And so at the moment, that subject is in a very confused state. And I don't think there's any consensus as to whether the dark matter, consensus that dark matter has been discovered. There may be hints that we're on the verge of discovering it. So that's where we are today. And I think it is one of these situations where I feel particularly lucky to be an astrophysicist.
We're
Because
saying
I think,
Dad.
The universe is just so incredibly fascinating, revealing surprises at every turn. And this is one of those big surprises. Durham University's Carlos Frank speaking with naked scientist Sarah Castor.
Ah, yeah, because I called Dadbod, wasn't it? Right.
Join us next time for more space science news, interviews, and
Just as long as it stays as Dad, not Daddy.
Coming in by email to astronomy@thenakedscientists.com. And you can follow The Naked Scientists on Twitter, that's @NakedScientists, or join us on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/TheNakedScientists. Naked Astronomy is produced by me, Ben Balsler from The Naked Scientists, and it comes to you from Cambridge University with support from the Science and Technology Facilities Council.
Your team just added its 67th AI tool and also your 67th security blind spot. The good news? The Vanta agent works like a GRC engineer in the background, finding every app your team uses, scoring the risk, and drafting fixes for you. Vanta is the platform used by over 16,000 fast-moving companies like Cursor, Atlassian, and Superbase, who are shaping
Did you work today?
AI and staying ahead of AI risk. Get started at Vanta.com. Your team just added its 67th AI tool and also...
But chemistry means that it reflects less than energy. The darkest part of it is really an understanding of what it is. We don't the theory, gravity, is to try and very confused state. And I think scientist Sarah Castor Perry. That's all we have on this month's Naked Astronomy. Join us next time for more space science news, interviews, and answers to your questions. In the meantime, keep your comments and questions coming in by email to astronomy@thenakedscientists.com. And you can follow The Naked Scientists on Twitter, that's @NakedScientists, or join us on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/TheNakedScientists. Naked Astronomy is produced by me, Ben Balsler from The Naked Scientists, and it comes to you from Cambridge University with support from the Science and Technology Facilities Council.
Your team just added its 67th AI tool and also your 67th security blind spot. The good news? The Vanta agent works like a GRC engineer in the background, finding every app your team uses, scoring the risk, and drafting fixes for you. Vanta is the platform used by over 16,000...
What are you doing?
I don't have to rush for sales. I'm stopping and smelling the roses.
Really?
Yeah, and Aldi price is always low.
Always low. Okay, let me try.
Aldi, good different.
Thrusting space science into the audio dimension. This is Naked Astronomy.
What are the mysterious blue straggler stars? In this month's Naked Astronomy, we'll find out why some stars stand out from the crowd, as well as investigate the polarity of the universe.
By measuring the polarization, it allows us to look at how the light has travelled. And the light is travelling through the universe, in which there are giant cosmic structures, so galaxies, big clusters of galaxies. And its light's getting very, very slightly bent by those structures. By measuring the bending of the light, we can trace out how and when cosmic structures formed in the universe.
Plus, we hear the latest news from the Royal Astronomical Society and take on your questions on rocket stability, detecting dark matter, and our place in the universe. I'm Ben Balsler, and this is Naked Astronomy.
Supported by the STFC, this is Naked Astronomy. For more information, look us up online at nakedscientist.com/astronomy.
First, a new segment for Naked Astronomy. Dr. Robert Massey is Deputy Executive Secretary of the Royal Astronomical Society, and each month he'll keep us updated on news in the archives and publications, as well as a wider world of space. To kick us off, I found out a bit more about the RAS itself.
Well, the Royal Astronomical Society is one of the largest astronomical bodies in the United Kingdom, and we have 3,600 members for historic reasons called fellows, one-third of whom are overseas, so we're a big organisation, and we run scientific meetings, we publish scientific journals.
No, I haven't yet.
Prestigious library, we give grants to people, and sometimes...
Because I went to open...
distinguished in their field.
It is true that there is an awful lot of different disciplines within astronomy, so you must have a very broad...
I went to open it in Safari. I didn't like it, and then I was like, I better open it in Brave. And then I just didn't get around to it. But I don't think bots have been an issue just yet.
I think that makes us very strong because
I mean,
we cover a big cross-section society with a lot of people who are very supportive of our work. And
I don't really see it like... Well, there's like one per stream, and that's about it, really. So I'm not that fussed at the moment. But you're right. When if I get more and more followers, or the more I do, obviously it will become a problem eventually.
What was then the Astronomical Society of London a couple of months later, and they invited William Herschel, President and discovered Uranus, to be the first president. It was given the Royal Charter about 10 years later in March 1831 by William IV, who then became the first patron, hence Royal Astronomical Society. And since then, every successive monarch has been the patron of the RAS. And following the time it started monthly notices of the RAS in 1829, which is our professional journal, it's been doing ever since. And it absorbed other bodies like the Spitalfields Mathematical Society in 1846. And if you trace it through history, you'll find that at various points various groups have joined in. And we've had various associates as well. And now we've grown from just 14 people right up to 3,600.
You are responsible for promoting a wide range of astronomy as well, and quite often I get astronomical news directly from you. So what has been happening in the last month or so?
Well, in terms of the things we've been doing, one of the things that's been very successful for us is our public lecture program. And I thought one of the items that has been one of the coverage is that we, Francisco Diego, who is from UCL, talking to us about the sort of legacy of space probes going up to other solar systems. Now, it's interesting this because it's long shot stuff. I mean, the odds of
Yeah, no, I haven't been thinking, like, I haven't been clicking on them. The, what is it here? The auto mod Q. I just keep denying them. It comes up in,
thousands of years, perhaps more likely millions of years, they may go reasonably close to other stars and be picked up by other
so when it comes up in,
speculative. But we were talking through the kind of legacy
when it comes up, they seem to, they get filtered by the auto mod Q at the moment, so I'm guessing that's fine, really.
Pictures of people and pictures of where we are in the galaxy, which you might think is an easy thing to convey, but actually is fantastically difficult because finding some kind of universal reference point for where the Earth is in the universe, particularly on timescales of billions of years, its position some have shifted slightly in that time as well. It's an incredibly hard thing to do. So we just had this fantastic discussion about what is the legacy of humanity. If we weren't around in say several millions of years, this is what our solar system is going to the cosmos. What on earth would people make of us? Would they think perhaps we look like the spidery maps that we look at with this as the curved lines are actually people?
The other thing about these particular missions, of course, is that we've added them above and beyond the original work specification. So we've learned from Voyager that we never really intended to learn from Voyager.
I think it's astonishing how well they've performed, and it's an example of where the upfront investment in space mission sounds high, but if it's running for 40 years, 50 years, then really it's not cheap as a sub-time experiment, and it's worth just carrying on that trickle of funding go. The fact that the Voyager 2 mission went to not one but 4 planets in the outer solar system, then turned back and took a picture of the entire solar system for the first time, is now signaling the outer regions of the sun's magnetic field, and just about getting into the region of interstellar space, the space between the stars. So it's just how much value you can get out of there, and as long as they have sufficient power to generate a little bit of electricity to transmit signals back to the Earth, there's no reason they can't carry on for some time to come. I think that the prediction.
yeah, I was thinking of asking you about that.
So that's the legacy of relatively old missions. What else have you been looking into this month?
Well, coming up next month, we've actually got to a meeting on high resolution astronomy, and I think this is
There we
an
go.
astronomy area.
Done.
I think back to the 1960s and 70s. If you look at the astronomy books that people like you and I looked at about childhood, you will see, for example, somewhat blue.
That's easy. That's easier than I expected.
Anything we see today, and there are a number of reasons for that. We've basically been able to put telescopes on to avoid the problems of the Earth's atmosphere and smeared out.
Now you're hacking me.
We've also been able to compensate for an increase in ways. So there's experiments in the UK, in the US, down in Chile, all of which are trying to get around the fact that if you look ahead to the night sky, the fundamental limiting factor is the blurriness in the air that light smears out light from objects, whether it's planets or stars or anything else. So we have a conference on this coming up in a couple of weeks' time. So looking at what is possible with this. Now, to give you an example, I think it would be it's trivial and maybe not possible with this device. We're at the stage where perhaps in the next decade we'll be able to see for ourselves planets the size of
Thank you.
stars other than our sun. So for the first time, we start to be able to see other worlds that we can actually, well, not trivially again, but conceivably go and visit in some distant point in the future.
Now we're going to have you as a regular guest for the podcast, so you'll be back again next month. But what should people be looking out for in the night sky this year?
Well, one of the nice things about autumn, although it's getting colder and perhaps isn't the most comfortable time of year because the nights get longer and dark skies through the night too. If you look out in early November, there's the maximum Tauri meteor shower, which I would recommend you going to. It doesn't produce very many. Its peak is the first week of November, but the ones that produce the particles that dry can be quite big and fairly slow. Quite bright because they can be slightly quite long lasting as well. So if you happen to be looking up, spend just 20 minutes, half an hour first week of November. If you've got a double sky, you may be pleasantly surprised. You may see some unusually bright meteors. So
Robert Massey from the Royal Astronomical Society. But it's not just the RAS who've had their eyes skyward. Our own Dominic Ford and Caroline Crawford have also kept up with space science news. Caroline, struggling her way through a dreadful cold, explains what's caused her interest.
This is going to be the start of the missions to Mars, due for launch in November. Now, the first one to blast off should be the Russian mission, and this goes under the glamorous name of Phobos Grunt, which actually means Phobos soil, and it's going to take 11 months to get to Mars. And it's going to kind of investigate and examine Mars from orbit. And the thing that's really interesting is it's going to do a really close examination of Mars' small moon Phobos, and this is one of Mars' 2 moons, and it's one that we suspect is actually a captured asteroid that's just gone into orbit around Mars as a moon. It's going to identify a possible safe landing site on Phobos and then actually touch down. And then it's going to ride Phobos for at least a year. It's got a whole suite of onboard instruments. It's going to survey its environment. It's going to investigate the kind of soil, the surface of the moon, and send us real close-up pictures of it. But not just that, it's got 2 robotic arms. I'm going to scoop up about 200 grams worth second mission that's due for launch more at the end of the month is the NASA, so the American mission to Mars. And this is a case of they're more or less repeating what they've done so well before, but bigger and better and meaner. And this is they're going to have a robotic rover landing on the surface of Mars. Officially, it's called the Mars Science Laboratory, but it's going under the name of Curiosity.
It was really cold when I walked up here before.
It's going to travel and explore the surface.
Now it's hot.
On board,
And I don't think it's the room temperature that's changed.
You can also scoop up samples, analyse them in its own laboratory on board. But it's going to be an awful lot.
Actually, I've got to walk behind the camera all the time to check if anybody's dropping in from Kick. So if you've dropped in from Kick and I've missed your message, switch over to Twitch or YouTube. Some things fell down.
Safely and make sure they can do that. What have they put in place to make sure they do it themselves?
Well, it's actually just the landing that's do these an awful lot of missions to Mars because it depends on the conditions in the atmosphere at the time of the descent. And when something like the MSL, this Mars Science Laboratory, comes into the atmosphere, it's got a heat shield and it's all sealed within this capsule, but it's coming in at about 6 kilometers per second. It's a huge amount of friction generated with the atmosphere, so it needs to be protected from that heat. And when it gets to about 7 kilometers above, the heat shell will drop off, and then it'll go into some kind of parachute. It'll take you down like another 5 kilometers. And at that point, it's got 8 thrusters, which should kick in and allow the scientists to maneuver it, the final stages of the adjustment. It's a bit like the Phoenix lander came down with thrusters at the end. But that is the most complicated part of the whole flight. It's just that tricky landing, getting it safe to the ground in the Martian atmosphere.
I assume this also had a part to play in the choice of where they would actually land it. I assume you can't always just go for the most interesting looking bits because it's not actually a safe place to land.
Well, yes, I mean, so I'm saying to the Gale project, it's actually the nice, flat, very plain bit of the Gale project. It's the targeted landing site.
Thank you very much, Cameron. Dominic, what have you seen for us this month?
Well, a paper published in 1980 shed some interesting light on why the Milky Way galaxy seems to be so low in the universe. And this comes back to these small dwarf galaxies which are around the Milky Way and would orbit around the Milky Way. Now, two of those known those are clouds that you can actually see with the naked eye in the southern hemisphere. There are about 20 more of those small dwarfs which are very faint in that you need very powerful telescopes to see about 3 millimeters that have been discovered in the last 10 years or so from the slow ice survey. Now, we think historically there used to be more of these dwarf galaxies. Over time they have collided with the Milky Way. So when they collide with the Milky Way, they're stripped of their gas.
Almost a peeky toe then.
Stars that we call globular star clusters. We think that most, if not all, of the globular star clusters around the Milky Way were originally these dwarf galaxies that collided with us. In fact, there is a dwarf galaxy merging with the Milky Way as we speak. That's such a dwarf galaxy that we call
32.5. Okay.
Because you can run and what you find in those simulations is that you're dwarf galaxies orbiting around the Milky Way as compared to the 20 that we actually see, which is called people for about 20 years. What you notice is what Pierre Opfer suggested is that perhaps as the Milky Way was moving, as it was starting to form stars, there was a sudden burst of ultraviolet radiation because you were forming members of very young, very blue, very hot, radiating ultraviolet light. And that ultraviolet light it ionized the quantum galaxies and converted them to form stars from that gas. So these pockets of gas that were going to form galaxies didn't actually form these stars that you can see. And a nice feature of that is that it preferentially stops the water which they see into the Milky Way.
Yeah.
But further out, you expect to see something closer to the numbers that historically have been predicted. And that actually matches the observations very well. And in their paper, they've managed to produce a case prediction, a big order of prediction of roughly the number of these dwarf galaxies which are seen. So that seems to be quite a nice solution to quite a long-standing problem.
Can we also see evidence of these clouds of ionized gas? Would we be able to look for them and show that this is where the star forming region would have been if it hadn't been for that ionization event?
I think it's not impossible. I'm not aware of any observation of that, and I think it's very difficult to see them.
Dominic Ford, and before him, Caroline Crawford. They'll be back later on to answer your questions. This is Naked as Still to come, I'll be exploring the origins of strange blue straggler stars. But first, Andrew Watson turns his attention to this one from Galaxy Science. Martin asks what will come first, Andromeda crashing into the Milky Way, or our sun becoming a red giant and consuming the planet?
Currently, it's thought that the sun will enter a red giant phase in about 5 billion years' time. In a red giant, these stars expands by enormous factor. So in the case of our sun, it will certainly expand to the point where it will engulf Earth on its present orbit. The trouble is that Earth might not be on its present orbit. In fact, it's quite possible that the Earth's orbit could move outwards in the intervening time. Now, the reason for that is that the sun is constantly losing mass, and as the sun gets less massive, the Earth's orbit actually moves outwards. So it's not actually totally clear whether the Earth will or won't be engulfed by the sun when it does enter that red giant phase in 5 billion years' time. But actually, in terms of what the sun is doing, there is a more pressing problem, which is simply that the sun constantly gets brighter during its lifetime. And some recent studies have suggested that
Is,
1 billion years
so
left
what show was on in the theatre today?
liquid water on its surface. So the sun is basically given the Earth as a habitable planet another billion years or so.
You're tired, you probably, was it,
Other part of the question
were
is
you
about
mecking all day?
collision with the Andromeda galaxy, and it is thought that our galaxy, the Milky Way, will collide with its nearest neighbour, the Andromeda galaxy.
Ah, pre-rig,
in
okay.
5 billion years'
Yeah,
time.
so,
that's considerably
so lots of running around. And did they fix the elevator?
about the Andromeda collision is wherever humans
That was-
are, if they're still around, it's most
That was
likely
kind of messed up that we couldn't use the elevator.
particular adverse effects to them, because the only thing that could really disrupt life on whatever planet we're on at that point would be a direct collision between the solar system and another star or another solar system. And actually, the solar system itself is microscopically tiny compared with the space between individual stars in any galaxy. So, although the collision of the Milky Way and Andromeda will certainly be a spectacular event, it's not clear that it will be particularly problematic for life.
Kenneth Silver wants to know why the sun sometimes appear to spread out from the clouds, as if the sun was merely a mile or so above the Earth. I
Because
listened to Dominic Ford.
on Sunday it seemed to be working fine apart from the call buttons. You could call it the ground floor, but you couldn't call it to any of the other floors. Oh no, you could call it up to, could you call it? You could call it up to level 2, you just couldn't call it to 1 or the basement. So that's not a lift edge. That's a, I think that's an electrical issue to do with the buttons. Yeah, so if you're in the basement, it won't come down to you. If you're on level 1, it won't come up to you. But if you're in it, if you're on the ground floor, you can call it to the ground floor, hop in, press a button, jump out before the doors close, and it'll appear on the floor that you send it to. So it's not fixed, but it's still working, I guess.
As Dominic suggests, these beams are coming out and they're going over your head, and they're effectively parallel beams. And as they go past you, sometimes it's very rare, you can see them converging side to side. They're called anti-crepuscular rays. And so you have a similar effect where the beam's gone over your head, and they're more or less going past the other, and you see them converging. So again, it's two parallel beams converging to infinity above you, and so you have this interesting effect of the sun.
I assume that's
Yeah.
when the sun is very low in the sky.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's really
Lurk away.
What questions can you have?
Lurky, lurky, lurky.
Stars are strange stars that don't seem to fit the standard picture of stellar evolution. A paper published in Nature on the 20th of October by Aaron Geller and Robert Mathieu helps shed some light on their origins. But to find out more, I visited Christopher Tout. He's the George Chatham Astronomer at the Institute of Astronomy and a fellow at Churchill College.
I'm busy listening to old BBC podcasts. I say old, I mean, they're from 2011. So, I thought, seeing I can't play music while I'm streaming, I might as well listen to old podcasts. And hopefully they won't, copyright check me.
So you don't see an equal number of similarly coloured, you don't see a full range.
What's the date of this one? This one is from
With a few in there, and those are the big ones.
Yes, indeed, but Lewin is almost equal.
25th of October 2011.
Just beyond the turn-off, but just a bit more massive, up to perhaps twice the mass of the stars that are at the turn-off.
Pardon me. No, actually.
So what actually happens in the turn-off? What's changing in those stars?
When the star is exhausted the hydrogen at its core, it can no longer burn
Nothing
the
from
center,
Kick.
but burning goes to a
Cool.
shell, leaving behind a core of helium ash. As the burning shell goes out, the core gets bigger. As the core gets bigger, there's nothing to support it, it can start to contract. And eventually it will become degenerate. At that point, the star expands and becomes a red giant. We know this happens because our models predict it, but we can't remember exactly it's physics that makes it expand. We just know that the hydrogen is the shell, of course, contracted, and the star starts to expand. But it means that there's a fundamental difference in the structure of the star. It's much bigger than red. It moves to a completely different colour. So it's no longer blue. So a star that remains blue is one of the blue rays.
Station about these blue stars that causes them to not undergo that change into changing in their blue phase.
We could have them simply by having born more recently, so they could just be much younger stars. And so they're apparently much younger. However, that's unlikely because all the other stars appear to have formed at the same time. Some interaction must occur. They must have somehow acquired some extra mass so that they were actually much lower mass stars that would not have evolved, but they had recently acquired and so push them up the hormone sequence to make them look as if they were much more massive stars, or they become much more massive stars to make them look as if they're much younger.
So that late injection of mass causes them to behave very differently, but almost miss out on that turn-off phase.
Well, they'll go through it, but they'll go later on. In fact, although they currently get younger, they'll actually evolve much faster than they would have done. They would have lasted much longer as a low mass star, because a low mass star has a longer lifetime. They become high mass, so they have a moment of glory while they're much brighter and bluer, but then they will eventually grow up and become giants. So there's lots of good evolution that's similar to a more massive star. It's just delayed, or it's an unusual time. For them, it's early, but it's delayed for a blue star.
So where do you think this extra mass is coming from?
Well, back in the 1970s, McCrea put forward a very reasonable argument that said that if you have a binary star, the more massive star evolves first. When it becomes a red giant, it gets so big that the material at its surface can be more attractive to its companion than to itself. And Points for the explanation of algae, where in algae we see a blue star very similar to the red giant is less luminous than the blue star, and is to be a bit mass. But of course, it ought to evolve first, so it ought to become more massive. McCrea said simply that blue stragglers are the remnants of these. So the red giant has transferred its mass to the blue star, making it more massive, so it become hotter, bluer, and then of course the giant has then gone on to evolve to a white dwarf, which is the end point of the evolution of such a star. So we simply see the blue straggler. That was a mechanism to report. That's very easy to test. We looked at the blue stragglers and we found, of course, as companions to them, we know that's the mechanism. Pair of white dwarfs, they're very faint, very difficult to see. Another explanation that came up more recently is because these stars, the blue stragglers, appear in dense globular clusters, in much larger numbers. It was suggested that they're actually the result of collisions between stars. So if you take two stars of a solar mass, collide them, you don't lose very much of that mass, you don't have two solar masses. So if you do that just before the one solar mass star was about to turn off, you have a two solar mass star, which is then blue straggler.
They both seem perfectly reasonable arguments to me. How can we test them both out, and how can we make up our minds as to which one is actually happening? Or could they both be happening?
Well, for a long time, it was in fact thought they were both happening. And I was involved in making numerical models of stars in clusters, where we actually looked at the dynamics of the star and the stellar evolution of the stars combined. And predict the number of blue stragglers. And we were finding about half of the blue stragglers formed from the primordial binary scenario, and about half formed by collisions. However, to really test what's going on, if we observe the stars, as I said, if they were formed by the mass transfer scenario from a primordial binary, they would have a white dwarf companion. So we could find the white dwarf companions. We would guarantee that was the method. Alternatively, if we found that they were either mostly single stars or they were binary stars.
That's odd.
Mostly single stars or they were binary stars.
I know you're lurking.
Then the collisions
So,
would be more likely scenario.
do mods not count towards viewers? Because I just realised. Now that you've got, I noticed that when I made your mod, the view count went back down.
You can't see the companions of the blue stragglers, but you can see radial velocity variations of the blue straggler.
Oh well. Not to worry.
You see the wobble that's there because of the presence of another star, even though you can't actually see the other star itself.
Yes, exactly. You can see that wobble for both stars, and you can work out the masses of the stars if you do the inclination field. We never know that. All we have is the one radial velocity. So what they did was to take the prediction from the numerical model, consider the companions, and work out a distribution from the distribution of companions, a distribution of radial velocities that you can see for blue stragglers. And they tested that against the distribution of radial velocities that are actually measured, and found that it just doesn't fit. They did, however, find that if they assumed that all the companions were about half the same mass, above the mass of a typical white dwarf from a star like the Sun, then they did fit. And so that suggested that you could fit them all with white dwarf companions, and they could all have been mass transfer scenario, but they were very unlikely to have formed even as many as we had expected, even the half that we expected to have formed by collisions probably hadn't formed by collisions. That's their interesting finding.
Does this mean that we now abandon the collision theory, or is there still a few sticking points that make us keep on it?
Well, as I say, we haven't actually looked at any of the individual stars, so we haven't ruled out that there were few formed by collisions. All we've done is shown that not as many formed by collisions as we had expected. And also they've only been able to look at relatively close binary stars, where you get relatively large radial velocities. They haven't looked at the very wide ones, so those could easily form by collisions as well. So there's more work to be done, but what we have shown is that it's not consistent with the model we had. That means that our understanding of collisions in that model is almost certainly wrong. I was one of the people who put that model together, and I know it was simply an educated guess based on a few simulations of colliding main sequence stars that showed that about 10% of the mass was lost. If you collide two stars and you lose half the mass, you don't create a blue straggler. So I think we need to look much more carefully again at how stars collide.
So what will be the next stage for researchers? That's what they need to do now.
Well, there are two things. First, we need to look at the actual dynamics and the physics of the collision star. That's actually quite hard to do because although we can make very good numerical models of fluid dynamic models now, lots of things, it's hard for a star because there's a very large density difference between the surface of the star and the centre of the star. The average density of a star is about 1/4. The surface is much thinner than the centre of the star. And so it's to get the numerical model that models the whole star, you will need this collision, the denser parts of one star are reaching the core of the star, and everything's mixing up. And during that friction, some of the material is getting accelerated and thrown off. We need to refine that.
Yeah, I'm going to get the iPad.
The other thing we need to do is then to look at how the star evolves after the collision, because it depends on how whether we manage to mix extra hydrogen back to the centre as to whether it can actually rejuvenate the planet later. It's mostly due to its mass, but it also depends on how much material goes. But then maybe we may change the evolution altogether. We may have a sudden burst of luminosity followed by nothing. So then we might have to see.
Christopher Towns proving that our understanding of stellar evolution is itself constantly evolving. This is the Naked Astronomy, and very soon Andrew Thompson will be finding out how much the polarity of the cosmic microwave radiation can help us to probe the universe. As always, we want your questions and your comments. Get them in by email to us at thenakedscientists.com. And that's exactly what Charles Moore did with this question for Dominic Ford. Charles says, if I try to balance a pencil on my finger, it takes an awful lot of movement to keep the pencil balanced. But rockets take off without any problems. Why is that?
Well, this is not a problem that rocket scientists have always got right themselves. There's quite embarrassing videos from the early days of rocketry. The rockets veered on you, of course. But it's an interesting analogy, Charles draws, with balancing a pen on your finger. And it's perhaps interesting to think about why it's so difficult to balance a pen on your finger. It's virtually impossible. And the reason why it's so difficult is because if the pen is slightly to one side, the finger is still pushing vertically upwards. The pen, that force is making the pen rotate, and so it tips even more in the direction it's already tipped in. And so it's tipped in unstable equilibrium. So you have to keep the finger moving quite fast to keep the pen balanced on your finger. Now actually a rocket is more stable than that, because whatever direction a rocket tips in, the thrust is always coming directly out of the rocket along the line of the rocket. And so if it tips slightly to the side, there's not any force that's going to steer further in that direction. So that's one sense that the rocket is more stable than a pen balanced on your finger. Obviously, you don't want it to tip at all in the first place. So in your classic cartoon picture of a rocket, you'll have 4 fins on the top. And what those fins do is, as the rocket is moving through the atmosphere, airflow past those fins. And if the rocket is tipped in a slightly different direction to its direction of travel through the atmosphere, the air flowing past the rocket will put a force on those fins and direct it back towards the direction that it's passing through the atmosphere. And that makes it difficult for the rocket to change direction. It means if you actually want to steer the rocket in a different direction, you have to steer really quite hard. Now, obviously there's a problem with that it requires you to have an airflow.
It seems like it should be really easy just to move your leg off to the side and that. This is targeting all those little tiny muscles around your hips that help stabilize everything else. And I realise now that I'm getting older, those muscles don't work. I haven't used them very well, so they hurt now.
So nowadays the control of rockets is entirely done by computers.
So,
monitoring the trajectory of the rocket, tipping and tilting the rocket thrusters back to keep it on course.
And Katie Hill sent us a question for Carolyn. She wants to know if it would be
so it's
possible to terraform the moon.
Well, let's just make sure that everybody knows what terraforming is. This is some sort of science fiction. Fans out.
Targeting those butt muscles, little butt muscles.
Idea, and I'm stressed it's just completely theoretical, that you could take a planet or a moon and transform it to an Earth, although a very Earth-like planet. And you know, it's not unreasonable to be able to do that, because if you think our Earth started as a very hospitable place, and okay, over some millennia, it evolved to something that resembled Earth. So it should be possible to do that to another planet. The trouble would be just accelerating the process. We kind of introduce or change the atmosphere, maybe change the temperature, introduce water, change the ecology, maybe change the terrain of the planet. All of that could theoretically be possible. Choose the moon though. The moon is very convenient. It does have the advantage that it's very easy to get to. But you've got this problem that it's too small. Even if you introduce a nice atmosphere there of oxygen, the moon doesn't have so much mass, it doesn't have so much gravity, it has trouble hanging on to that atmosphere. And what often is that they dissipate quite quickly, and the sunlight will break down the molecules to much larger constituents which can easily escape. So you'd have to keep replenishing the atmosphere all the time. The other thing about the moon is it's very dry. It's drier than any desert on Earth. And if we want something that's a bit more Earth-like, I'm guessing especially if we want to have hills there and that kind of landscape. So I really don't think the moon is a sensible way to go for the terraforms. Sensible way to go for the terraforms.
Is there any way that we should be looking at candidate terraforming?
Well, do you know, I would say a much better candidate would be Mars. Because to be honest, out of the planets in the solar system, it's the one that is most like Earth. Okay, it's smaller and it's got the reduced gravity, but it's nearer to us, so it's not as convenient as the moon, but it's not impossible to get to. It does have water and it does have a stronger gravity. We'd have to be quite radical about how we changed it. So, I mean, quite apart from any ethical things about whether we should change Mars, what do we change Mars if we found bacterial life on Mars, all these things. Just on the practical stakes, huge technological advances would have to be made. We'd have to find some way of increasing the temperature for a start, because the average temperature on Mars is about -60 degrees C. If we want all that water ice is locked in the soil, it's permafrost, what have you, and water ice in the poles. We're going to have to heat up the planet somehow. You maybe introduce a nice greenhouse effect to it to raise the temperatures, maybe utilise solar energy and stuff. That would make it a lot more inhabitable, it would unlock the water. But we've also got the problem in the atmosphere. The atmosphere is carbon dioxide, and we have to change it to oxygen. So maybe we need to do some genetic engineering to things that can then change the atmosphere for us. But even if that wasn't enough, I mean, it's the same with the moon. With Mars, you do have this fundamental problem that it doesn't have a strong magnetic field like the Earth. So either on the moon or Mars, you're very vulnerable to damaging radiation from the sun. So I think lots of a magnetic shield around just again to protect us from harmful effects of these flares or these mass ejections of charged particles that come from the sun. So I think it is quite a huge challenge. I say it's impossible, but it's certainly not something that we're going to do soon. And the main problem is, I don't know quite how we would do it so fast that we can actually achieve results within a human lifetime. I mean, you almost can feel we're slightly barred fast, and it's planet factory when you need him. I think that's what we have to rely on.
And now Andy Robinson is taking advantage of his new position at Oxford University to meet some of their space scientists and get to grips with their work. This month he spoke to cosmologist Dr. Joe Doty.
On this podcast, we've spoken a lot before about cosmic microwave background, how you can tell us about the Big Bang. But one of the things you're studying is the polarization of the cosmic microwave background. So, what is polarization, and what is in the cosmic microwave background?
Good question. So, the cosmic microwave background, or we often call it the CMB because it's easier to use, as you know, comes from the Big Bang. And sound has waves through space traveling for 40 billion years. Imagine a wave rippling through space. But light waves ripple in two different directions. Vertically and horizontally, two different directions of and by measuring the polarization, we see if the waves are in two different directions that they can vibrate in or oscillate in. It allows us to see back to the Big Bang in a way that you can't if you just look at the temperature of the light rather than its polarization. You have lots of galaxies in between us and light we're looking at that also send out microwave light, but they're not polarized or not very polarized. And so if we can look at the polarization, we get to kind of look straight through those and they don't get in our way. So that's one nice thing, is it allows us to see back to the Big Bang better. But the other reason is that by measuring the polarization, it allows us to look at how the light has travelled on its journey to us from the Big Bang. And the light is travelling through the universe, in which there are giant cosmic structures. So galaxies, big clusters of galaxies, the dark matter web of structure that fills up the universe. And this light from the Big Bang is getting very, very slightly bent by those structures. The gravity is bending. And by measuring the bending of the light, which we can do by looking at its polarization, we can trace out how and when big cosmic structures formed in the universe.
Pardon me.
Gravitational lensing. We've just managed to see it just in the last year with a telescope called ACT.
I think it's going to be an early bedtime for me tonight.
As we expected, and it's given us a new view of what's in the universe. But we're hoping that by measuring that, we'll be able to figure out what is filling up the universe, which at the moment a lot of that's completely unknown.
Now, you're involved with lots of different missions. One of them is the Planck mission that's measuring the microwave background from space. But you're also working on this ACT telescope, the Atacama Cosmology Telescope, and its successor, ACT-POL. So given that you've got an observatory up in space, which is presumably the best place to measure, why do you also want to build observatories like ACT and ACT-POL on the ground?
Obviously, it's great being in space because you get to get out of the atmosphere and be able to look cleanly at the sky. But actually, the ground-based observatories do pretty well. So their ACT and ACT-POL are both in Chile. It's the highest telescope in the world, above 5,000 metres. So it's extremely high up in the air, where things are high and dry, and you can actually see things very clearly out into space. Of course, if you can afford to go to space, and we have... the Planck satellites in space, that's fantastic. But there is a limit to the detail that Planck can see. So Planck can measure the CMB, but only because it's an instrument flying that had to go up, be shot out into space. It's got a limited size. It can't be that big. So at the ACT is much, much bigger, and so it can look at the CMB in much greater detail than Planck can. Certainly in terms of its ability to measure polarization, it can do that in a way that Planck cannot. So it's complementary to Planck.
So taking the future results from Planck and from ACT-POL together, what would your dream scenario? What could be the best thing that could come out from these polarization measurements?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. One is that we would be able to measure a particular signal that could tell us that something called inflation happened in the early universe.
I don't know what the game's called, but there's that. I see a lot on reels on Instagram of people with little white characters running around hiding. Then they paint themselves to hide, and somebody comes around and shoots them. I mean, those have been very entertaining the last couple of days. Don't know what the game is. It looks like a lot of fun. I think I have just more fun just watching people have fun playing that game though. You know, there is probably a Switch version of it, but the kids have the Switch in Japan at the moment, so I might have to go out and buy myself a Switch 2 so I can keep playing games while they're away.
So the polarity of the CMB might help us to understand the history of the universe, but how do we know the position of Earth within the Milky Way? That was asked by Henry Royce, who's listening to us in Germany, and I put it to him.
This is a very interesting question because, in fact, it's not easy to find out, well, let's talk about the sun, the thing that we're tied to, where we are in the galaxy. It's this sort of problem of if you're in the middle of something, you cannot really map it out. So if I go and stand in the middle of town down the road, I could not draw you a map of the town just from where, my one vantage point, because everywhere I look, there'd be buildings and stuff. The only way I could get a clear view is to be right above it looking down, and then I could sort of map out the whole town. So we can't do that with our galaxy. Yeah, we can't fly above it and look down, but we can be informed by this bird's eye view we have of other galaxies, and there are so many we observe that can inform our view of the galaxy. But just for a minute to step back from this vantage point now, even without the aid of telescopes or what we know about different galaxies, you can immediately tell some things. The stars you see in the sky are all part of the galaxy, and with our unaided eye we can see several thousand of them. However, many of them are in this diffuse band across the sky we call the Milky Way. It wasn't until Galileo looked at it that it was clear that this was, thousands of very famous stars. And so the fact that this is a thin band across the sky tells you that we're not located in a spherical distribution of stars. We've got something that's very flattened. And the fact that it's much brighter down in the
stream's still going good. I don't know what I just touched then.
There's a huge conglomeration of stars in that centre. Even from just that simple observation, you start to build up a picture. And the fact that it's quite narrow and it splits the sky in two, again tells us we're not above this disk, we're not below the disk, we're actually right in the middle of it. So we're already building up a picture. And this is how early astronomers tried to map out the galaxy. So you had William Herschel in 1785, who just more or less counted stars along different lines of sight, several hundred lines of sight through the galaxy, and he assumed that if you didn't see many stars in that direction, near the edge of the galaxy, towards the centre of the galaxy, he built up quite a good picture of the galaxy that showed it had this quadruple distribution. It wasn't particularly accurate because he thought it was much closer to the centre than it really is, and he didn't know a thing about the fact that many different stars have actually different luminosities, so you can't just infer the distance from how bright a star is, and he didn't know about things like dust, which obscure the light from stars. But nonetheless, he got this idea of this flattened distribution. And even, in the early 20th century, people were still arguing about the sun's position in the galaxy. And for example, Harlow Shapley, an American astronomer, was looking at the distribution of these big balls of stars called globular clusters, and noticed they were all over in the southern half of the sky. They all seemed to surround this bright patch of light, anything associated with the centre, and by measuring the distances to them, he was inferring the distance from the galaxy. So it's something we piece up all together. I mean, of course, we don't just rely on stars, we have this multi-wavelength astronomy. So we can look at gas giants, we can look at infrared and radio properties of matter within the galaxy, we can look at the distribution of blue star clusters, and hopefully those map out the spiral arms and the distribution of the galaxy, because infrared light allows us to see further through the gas and dust, and so we can see further than we could just from visible astronomy. So our position in the galaxy is we think we are on a little spur, little backwater from what's known as the Perseus arm. And that main arm is about 2,000 light years further out from the centre of the galaxy than we are. And then it's clear there's another spiral arm that's about 6,000 light years further in towards the centre of the galaxy. That's the Sagittarius scutum arm. After that, it starts to get a bit big. We certainly have very little idea about what's on the other side of the galaxy. It's so obscure, there's so much dust and gas in the way that we really can't map that out. And I would say that even up to 3 years ago, there were still arguments about whether our spiral arm had two arms or not. We finally come down to the idea that it's just got two arms, maybe with an elongated bulge, so the galaxy is much more of a bald spiral system. I will say, in many ways, the structure of our galaxy is something else, and it's still a little bit of a mystery.
The first observations of early galaxies must have really helped us get an idea of the sorts of shapes that our galaxy could be, and hopefully put some of the results we've already got into perspective.
Well, it's people have been looking at a whole variety of nebulae, and they all have different shapes and sizes.
20 kilos.
And even though there were some spiral nebulae that were constants in different telescopes, even come the 1920s, it wasn't clear whether they were just happened to be spiral but were located in our galaxy, or whether they were island universes outside of our galaxy. And it probably wasn't until the work of Hubble in the 1920s that they established that they were much greater distances than the size of our galaxy, and therefore it's only at that point that observation of those begins to reflect our understanding of our own galaxy.
There's almost all we have for this month. Let's take on a really big, generally 50 million tons by foot, things like the Higgs boson, dark matter, and dark energy, so very hard to detect. And the matter side, the big part should be real.
I'm going to split up the question and answer separately for the Higgs boson, for dark matter, and for dark energy. With the Higgs boson, we're going to know very soon indeed, probably before the end of this year, whether the Higgs boson is there or not, thanks to the Large Hadron Collider. We know what we're looking for, and I find it all the time an answer. So let's move on to dark matter. Dark matter are lots of independent lines of evidence that is out there.
There you go. If you're tuning in on Twitch, I mean not on Twitch, on Kick, I don't really check Kick at all. Come over to Twitch or YouTube to chat. If Kick was to have a stream manager, I'd probably have it up as well, but it doesn't. I've just added Kick because it's, why not? So, but come check it out on Twitch and YouTube. That's the best place for it.
That really doesn't tell us in the same way as it would with Higgs. promising for alternative models, whereas typically
Alright,
dark
so
matter
it's
models do
20.
extremely well with a range of
now.
different observations.
Need
Now, finally, we come to dark energy. This is a bit
20,
different
so
because
it's
although there's good evidence that the expansion is accelerating, when we talk about dark energy, we're actually just using a sort of catch-all name for whatever the physics is that is causing that expansion. And loads of different theories, different possibilities that fit into that name of dark energy. And the thing to bear in mind is that whatever the effect is, it is so weak, it is so tiny on the laboratory scale, it's not we will ever be able to do a direct experiment with probe. But for a definite answer to that, we're simply going to have to watch how the theories develop over the next years and decades.
Thanks, Andrew. That's all we have for this month's Naked Astronomy. Join us next time for more space science news, interviews, and answers to your questions. In the meantime, keep your comments and questions coming in by email to astronomy@thenakedscientists.com. And you can follow The Naked Scientists on Twitter. That's @NakedScientists, or join us on Facebook, facebook.com/TheNakedScientists. Naked Astronomy is produced by me, Ben Butler, and it comes to you from Cambridge University with support from the Science and Technology Facilities Council.
I'm calorie counting.
I'm doing shakes.
I'm doing panic soup.
I'm fasting.
Yeah, I'm doing keto. They can do it the hard way. I'm doing light and easy. Delicious, perfectly portioned meals so I can lose weight without losing the joy of eating. Start losing weight the light and easy way.
okay.
What are you doing?
I don't have to rush for sales. I'm stopping and smelling the roses.
Really?
Yeah, Aldi prices are always low.
Why is it? Okay, let me try.
Aldi, good difference.
Thrusting space science into the audio dimension. This is Naked Astronomy.
What are the mysterious blue stars? This Naked Astronomy will find out why some stars stand out from the ground, as well as investigate the polarity of the universe.
Polarization, it allows us to look at how light travels, and the light is traveling through the universe, in which there are giant stars, so galaxies, big clusters of galaxies, and it's very, very slightly bent by those structures. By measuring the bending of the light, we can trace out how and when big structures form.
Latest news from the Royal Astronomical Society and take on your detecting dark matter and our place in the universe. I'm Ben Butler, and this is Naked Astronomy.
Supported by the STFC, this is Naked Astronomy. For more information, look us up online at nakedscientist.com/astronomy.
First, a new segment of Naked Astronomy. Dr. Robert Massey is Deputy Executive Secretary of the Royal Astronomical Society, and each month he'll keep us updated on news from the RAS and publications, as well as the wider world of space science. To kick us off, I found out a bit more about the RAS itself.
Well, the Royal Astronomical Society is one of the largest astronomical bodies in the United Kingdom, and 3,600 members of scientists and fellows, one-third of whom are overseas, so we're a big organisation, and we run scientific meetings, we publish scientific journals, we're large and prestigious body, we give grants to people, and sometimes we give medals as well if they've been distinguished in their field.
It is certainly true that there is an awful lot of different disciplines within astronomy, so you must have a very broad range of fellows.
One of the strengths, I think, as well as sometimes one of the challenges, is that, yes, you're absolutely right, we don't just have professional astronomers because of the way we were founded. We actually include distinguished amateur astronomers as well. We have people who used to be professional astronomers, but now moved into other areas, from journalism, science writing, through to teaching, and a range of other occupations as well. And actually, I think that makes us very strong because it means that we have a big cross-section society. A lot of people are very supportive of our work, and they understand why you should fund this and why this is good for science.
The society is very well established. So how did it first get set up?
It was set up in 1820, and the story is that 14 gentlemen, described them as sat down to dinner on the 12th of January at the Freemasons Tavern in Lincoln's Inn Fields, and then they organised the first Astronomical Society of London in London. They invited William Herschel, as it went, to spend Europe as the first president. It was given a royal charter about 10 years later, March 1830, by William IV, and became the first patron of his Royal Astronomical Society. Since then, every successive king has been a patron of the RAS, and started lucky notice of the RAS in 1800, which is our mission. Ever since, and it had two other bodies that were still built mathematical society in 1956. And if you trace it back to various institutions, and now we've grown from just 14 people right up to
You are responsible for providing news directly from you. So what has been happening in the last month or so?
one of the things we've been doing, one of the things that's been very successful for us is our lecture program. And I thought one of the items that doesn't get a lot of coverage is that we
I really shouldn't have had 2 Happy Meals for dinner.
about the sort of legacy of
Oh, I'm stuffed.
systems. Now, it's interesting this because it's long shot stuff. The consequences of this happening are really quite low, but
I really,
I'm aware of that there are now 4 space
it shouldn't have been Happy Meals for dinner.
They were travelling past into the outer planets of the solar system, and now they've left it, and they're on the way out into external space. And in tens of thousands of years, perhaps more likely millions of years, they may go reasonably close to other stars and be picked up by other civilization. Now, as you can see, it's all very speculative. But we were talking through the kind of legacy that people would find, and what you would make of it if you were an alien civilization picking up one of these things, what you would look at, because the big possibilities are obviously artificial, but stylus to play this technology, which you can see how difficult this is to begin with. Pictures of people and pictures of where we are in the galaxy, which you might think is an easy thing to convey, but actually it's fantastically difficult because finding some kind of universal reference point for where the Earth is in the universe, particularly on timescales of millions of years, given its position somewhat shifted slightly in that time as well, it's an incredibly hard thing to do. So we just had this fantastic discussion about what is the legacy of humanity. If we weren't around in, say, several millions of years' time, this is one of our solar remnants going out into the cosmos. What on earth would make us? Would they think perhaps we look like the spidery maps that we read, or would they suspect that the curved, wavy lines are actually people?
The other thing about this is how much we've learned above and beyond the original work specification. So we've learned things we never really intended to learn, unfortunately.
I think it's astonishing how well they perform. It's something where, the upfront investment in space station takes time, but if it's running for 40 years, 50 years, then really it looks like a societal experiment, and it's worth just carrying that trickle of funding to keep it going. The fact that the Voyager 2 mission went to not one, but to solar system, and turned back to picture the entire solar system for the first time, is now something that out to regions of the sun's magnetic field, and just about getting information out of space between the stars. So just how much value you get out of that. As long as they have sufficient power to generate a little bit of transmit signals back to the Earth, there's nothing going on. Sometimes to cover the prediction itself, they have some time to do.
So that's the legacy of the old.
Well, coming up next month, we've actually got to high resolution astronomy, and I think this is an extraordinary area. Actually, if I think back to the 1960s and 70s, if you look in the astronomy books that you and I looked at in childhood, you will see, for example, somewhat blurry images of planets. They're not bad, but even the best ones in the world don't compare with anything you see today. And there are a number of reasons for that. The best thing about telescopes in orbit, the Earth's atmosphere is smeared out and just around. We've also been able to compensate for it in increasingly good ways. So there's experiments in the UK, in the US, down in Chile, all of which are trying to get around the fact that if you look up into the night sky, the fundamental limiting factor is the blurriness of the air, always smears out light from whether it's planets or stars or maybe or anything else. And so we have a conference on this coming up in a couple of weeks' time. And it's looking at what is possible with this. Now, to give you an example, it would be it's trivial, it may not be possible with this particular system, but we're at the stage where perhaps in the next decade we'll be able to see from ourselves planets the size of the Earth going around all the stars other than our sun. So for the first time, we start to be able to see other worlds that actually, not trivially again, but conceivably go as in some distant points in the future.
Now we're going to have you as a regular guest here on the Naked Astronomy podcast, so you'll be back again next month with another round. But what should people be looking out for in the night sky this month?
One of the nice things about the autumn, although it's getting colder and perhaps isn't the most comfortable time of year because the nights are getting longer and you've got dark skies through time too. If you look out in early November, there's the maximum, the Taurine meteor shower, which I would recommend people go and look at least on a casual basis. It doesn't produce very many. But once they get to the atmosphere, the particles that drive it can be quite big and fairly slow, and that means they can be quite bright. Because they can be slowly, they can be quite long-lasting as well. So if you happen to be looking up to 20 minutes, half an hour looking up at the dark sky, you may be pleasantly surprised to see
Robert Massey from the Royal Astronomical Society. But it's not just the RAS who had their eyes skywards. Aaron Dadbod and Caroline Crawford have also kept up with this news. Caroline was struggling her way through a dreadful cold. Explained what's
This is going to be the start of 2 new missions, both due for launch. The first one to blast off should be the Russian mission, and it's going to be Amazon Phobos Grunt, especially in the soil. It's going to take 11 months to get to Mars, and it's going to kind of investigate for a few months when it gets there. But the thing that's really interesting is it's going to do a really close examination of Mars' small moon Phobos, and this is one of Mars' 2 moons, and it's one that we suspect is actually a captured asteroid that's just gone into orbit around Mars' moon. It's going to identify a possible safe landing site on Phobos and then actually touch down. And then it's going to ride Phobos for at least a year. It's got a whole suite of onboard instruments. It's going to survey its environment. It's going to investigate the kind of soil, the surface of the moon, and send us real close-up pictures of it. But not just that, it's got 2 robotic arms. It's going to scoop up about 200 grams worth of Phobos soil, put it in a return capsule, which will then be sent back to Earth, and it should return by about August 2014. That's quite exciting because there aren't that many objects in the solar system that we've got actual physical samples from on the Earth. And apart from the moon, this will be the first planetary body that we bring samples back from. So that's the first one. The second mission that's due for launch tomorrow at the end of the month is the NASA, so the American mission to Mars. And this is a case of them more or less repeating what they've done so well before, but bigger and better and meaner. And this is they're going to have a robotic rover landing on the surface of Mars. Officially, it's called the Mars Science Laboratory, but it's going under the name of Curiosity. And it's, again, it's going to land on the surface, it's going to travel on the surface, and it's got these onboard scientific instruments, so it can examine the rocks, so Phoenix there, it can scoop up samples, analyse them in its own little laboratory on board. But it's going to be an awful lot of previous to a spectrum opportunity. It's going to be some 3 meters in length, so at least twice the size. If you actually see photos of it, it is quite a phenomenal machine, and you've got to think then how all that gets folded up for launch into a rocket. Again, that's quite an interesting issue. And the landing site is somewhere called
Last
Dadbod.
exercise.
I've chosen that because it's got some clays
Dead
and
bugs.
minerals in it. It detected this from orbit that strongly suggests it used to be under liquid water. Because the prime science aim of
Worth
Curiosity
the
is
ads.
to really look for both water and any organic molecules that could indicate either the previous existence or the current presence of bacterial life on Mars, so microorganisms on Mars. So again, 2 very exciting missions, both due for launch next month.
How long are they expected to run for then? A lot of missions we sent out that way have gone on far longer than expected, giving us fantastic results for months.
I was happy when I was eating the Happy Meals. I'm not so happy now.
Curiosity has a nominal lifespan of 2 years on the surface. But
Damn.
if spirit and opportunity or anything to go by, hopefully we may get more worth of science out of it.
The other issue is, of course, when we actually get it to land safely and make sure that it can do the work once it gets there. What have they put in place to make sure that it will touch down somewhere where it'll be safe?
Well, it's actually just the landing that's so difficult, and as I'm sure listeners are aware, we do lose an awful lot of missions to Mars because it does depend a lot on conditions in the atmosphere at the time of the descent. And when something like the MSL, this Mars Science Laboratory, comes into the atmosphere, it's got a heat shield and it's all sealed within this capsule, but it's coming in at about 6 kilometres per second. It's a huge amount of friction generated with the atmosphere, so it needs to be protected from that heat. And when it gets to about 7 kilometres above, the heat shell will drop off, and then it goes some kind of parachute. They take it down like another 5 kilometres. And at that point, it's got 8 thrusters, which will kick in and allow the scientists to manoeuvre at the final stages of the adjustment. So a bit like the Phoenix lander came down on thrusters at the end. But that is the most complicated part once it's just that tricky landing, getting it safe to the ground through the Martian atmosphere.
Part to playing the choice of where they would actually land it. I should always just go for the most interesting looking bits because it's not actually a safe place to land.
Well, yes, I'm saying it's in the Gale crater. It's actually the nice, flat, very plain bit of the Gale crater that's the targeted landing site.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Dominic, what have you seen for us this month?
Well, a paper published in Months and Notices this month shed some interesting light on why the Milky Way galaxy seems to be quite so alone in the universe. And this comes back to the small dwarf galaxies. Which are around the Milky Way and that orbit around the Milky Way. Now, two of the best known of those are the Magellanic Clouds that you can actually see with the naked eye from the southern hemisphere. There are about 20 more of those small dwarfs which are very faint and that you need very powerful telescopes to see, and there's about 3 million of them been discovered in the last 10 years or so from the slow digital spectrum. Now, we think historically there used to be more of these dwarf galaxies, and over time they have collided with the Milky Way. And when they collide with the Milky Way, they're stripped of their gas. What's left is a ball of stars that we call Globular Star Cluster. And we think that most, if not all, of the globular star clusters around the Milky Way were originally these dwarf galaxies that collided. In fact, there is a dwarf galaxy emerging with the Milky Way as we speak. That's the Sagittarius dwarf galaxy that we think will, in due course, form a new globular star cluster. These dwarfs, because you can run computational simulations of the formation of the Milky Way and of its environment. And what you find in those simulations is that you expect to see about 500 or so dwarf galaxies orbiting around the Milky Way, as compared to about 20 that we actually see. And this is called the missing satellites problem. It's been puzzling people for about 20 years. So like in Months and Notices, what Pierre Ogver has suggested is that perhaps as the Milky Way was forming, as it was starting to form stars, there was a sudden burst of ultraviolet
Exercise where you get to lie on the ground between reps. Good.
Stars, very young, very blue, very hot, no ultraviolet light. And as that ultraviolet light passed through nearby dwarf galaxies, it ionised all of the hydrogen gas in those galaxies and converted it to a form where you couldn't form stars from the gas. And so these pockets of gas that went to form in galaxies didn't actually form into stars that we could see. And a nice feature of that is that it preferentially stops the dwarfs very close into the Milky Way from forming. But further out, you expect to see something closer to the numbers that historically have been predicted. And that actually matches the observations very well. And in their paper, they've managed to produce a post-diction, I guess it would be rather than a prediction, of roughly a number of these dwarf galaxies which I'll see. So that seems to be quite a nice solution to quite a long-standing puzzle.
Can we also see evidence of these clouds of ionised gas? Would we be able to look at them and show that this is where the star-forming region would have been if it hadn't been for that?
I think it's not impossible. I'm not aware of any observation of that, and I think it would be very difficult to see that.
Dominic Ford, and before him, Carolyn Crawford. We'll be back later on to answer your questions. This is Naked Astronomy, and still to come, I'll be exploring the origins of strange blue spiral stars. But first, Andrew Johnson turns his attention to this question from Martin Simons. Martin asks, what will come first? Andromeda crashing into the Milky Way, or our sun becoming a red giant and consuming our planet?
Currently, it's thought that the sun will enter red giant phase in about 5 billion years' time. In a red giant phase, a star expands by an enormous factor. So, in the case of our sun, it will certainly expand to the point where it will engulf Earth on its present orbit. The trouble is that Earth might not be on its present orbit by that time. In fact, it's quite possible that the Earth's orbit could move outwards in the intervening time. Now, the reason for that is that the sun is constantly losing mass, and as the sun gets less massive, the Earth's orbit actually moves outwards. So it's not actually totally clear whether the Earth will or won't be engulfed by the sun when it does enter that red giant phase in 5 billion years' time. But actually, in terms of what the sun is doing, there's a more pressing problem, which is simply that the sun constantly gets brighter in its lifetime. And some recent studies have suggested that there may only be something like 1 billion years left during which the Earth could have liquid water on the surface. So the sun has basically given the Earth as a habitable planet another billion years or so. Now, the other part of the question is about collision with the Andromeda galaxy. And it is thought that our galaxy will collide with its nearest neighbour, the Andromeda Galaxy, in about 5 billion years' time. So that's considerably after the time at which Earth actually becomes uninhabitable. The thing to bear in mind about the Andromeda collision is wherever humans are, if they're still around, it's most likely that the Andromeda collision will not have any particular adverse effects to them. Because the only thing that could really disrupt life on whatever planet we're on at that point would be a direct collision between the solar system and another star or another solar system. And actually, the solar system itself is microscopically tiny compared with the space between individual stars in any galaxy. So, although the collision of the Milky Way and Andromeda will certainly be a spectacular event, it's not clear that it will be particularly problematic for life.
And sticking with solar science, Kenneth Silver wants to know why sunbeams sometimes appear to spread out from the clouds as if the sun was merely a mile or so above the Earth. I put this one to Dominic Ford.
Well, I think what Kenneth is describing are crepuscular rays. They're actually quite commonly seen when you've got nearly complete cloud cover, but you've got a few breaks.
What's on the cards for tomorrow?
And if you don't know what we're talking about, then I would suggest that
Tomorrow's workout is going to be, dumbbell incline press again.
Now, what's causing what you're seeing
And
here is where you have a layer of cloud cover, and in that cloud cover,
it's a max rep
and through that hole,
day.
the sun is shining, and it's creating a beam of
What's
light.
that? So dumbbell incline press, bench press, dumbbell bicep curls, dumbbell tricep extensions, hammer curls. Oh, I haven't done hammer curls for a while.
Coming down through the atmosphere. And
Dumbbell bench press again, flat bench, incline to start with, then flat later, and dumbbell pullover. Dumbbell pullovers are kind of fun. It's like such a stretch. It's such a stretch though here, like stretching through your shoulder. Anyway, that's tomorrow night.
Now, the rays that Kenneth described, I think, were fanning out as they were moving down towards the horizon. In fact, there's a really surprising effect you can see, where these rays appear to be fanning out upwards as you look higher in the sky. And what's happening there is that this beam of light is passing almost directly over your head. So somewhere near the horizon, in front of you,
That's it for.
in the cloud cover,
That's it for today.
coming out of this hole, they're passing over your head. So as you look up higher in the sky, you see the rays fanning out, and somewhere behind you.
Dadbod, still dadbodding.
So that is really quite striking. It looks like the sun is coming out beneath the horizon.
Thanks for watching. You know, subscribe, hit the like buttons, tell your friends to subscribe. They don't have to watch. I'm not that fussed. But bye, sad boy. I'll probably see you online a bit later when you're streaming. I guess. I don't know. If you're streaming tonight, I'll jump in again as well. Lurk like you do. I was distracted last night when you were streaming and you said goodnight. I was distracted. I was like, oh, quick, oh, shit. Tight, bye-bye. Well, good night. Quickly did that. And then I think the next moment I looked, we raided somebody else. So, but I'll see you in person at some point. Not this weekend though. I'm not working this weekend. Just a couple of days at home. I might start playing Fallout again. I play it on the Xbox and I don't have a computer that I can set up. I wonder if my Mac Mini, I've got a Mac, behind this purple, I've got an old Mac Mini. I bought it in like 2009, 2008, no, when did I buy it? Maybe I got it in 2012 or 2013. Might have even been in 2013. I've got a Mac Mini there. I used to have it under the TV as a media server. Maybe I can use that. Run the Xbox through it onto the TV. Then I've got to try and get a camera to hook up so I can film myself on the couch and do the picture-in-picture while I play video games. That I'm going to have to work out. That's an idea. No, if I do that though, I probably won't be working out as much. But just get fat on the couch. All right. Hey, post imposter. Sorry, I just. What? Yeah. Hey, how you going? I've just finished my workout. Yes, I was busy at work on Monday. Didn't go shopping, so I did a workout instead. Last night I didn't feel like streaming at all. And while I've got the ingredients for a few different things. I'm not working this weekend, so I don't really need to meal prep for work. So I might Saturday or Sunday I'll do a meal prep stream. Yeah, Saturday or Sunday I'll do a meal prep stream. I'll try and... What would be a good time, just thinking of your local time, the UK time, what would be a good time UK-wise for a food stream? And then I'll try and work out what that is in Australia and do a food stream at that time of the day. It'll be Saturday or Sunday.
So the red giant has transferred its mass to the blue star, making it more massive, so it's become hotter, bluer, and the companion that was the giant then gone on to evolve to a white wolf, which is the
Sad Boy's not screaming tonight. All right, well,
so we simply see the blue straggler.
I'll see when I see you, Sad Boy.
That's very, probably very easy to test. If you look at the blue stragglers, we found white wolves as companions.
But yeah, let me know either
Very faint, very difficult to see.
in the comments on this video
That came up more recently is because these
what would be a good time in the UK wise, and then I'll work out, I'll do the math.
So if you take two stars of solar mass, collide them, you don't lose very much of that mass, you make one of two solar masses.
So you usually work up an hour ago. So that'd be, oh, so that'd be like 6 o'clock Australia time. Yeah, that'd work for me. That's an easy enough time. I'm usually a night owl on the weekends anyway. So, oh cool, thank you for that. That works too. Alright, I'll try and do something Saturday or Sunday night. I can't promise what it'll be, because I've got a few things to do Friday, so I know I'm not going to be streaming Friday. So, yeah. Alrighty, so I'm going to finish the stream now, and go inside, and try and have an early night. I mean, probably Sad Boy's not streaming on Twitch tonight, so I won't be staying up watching him. So that'll be that's probably why I'll have a good night, an early night. So, all right, thanks for watching, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.